head. Here's the other side of the connecting rod cap. One thing you notice, I don't know if you can see on the connecting rod cap here, there's those lines. That's how you know how to orient it. So it's like kind of like a puzzle. You find the lines on the other side, which they're not very easily detected, but take my word for it, they're right there. And that's how you'd put that cap on. So not like this, but like this. You just line up those lines like a puzzle. I'm going to put the bolts back in. Okay. Let me show you around the piston a little bit. So we've got connecting rod here, connecting rod cap, connecting rod bolts. Here's the piston. The piston is held onto the connecting rod by a pin. It's a hollow pin right there called a wrist pin. You can see just a small portion of the wrist pin there. And the wrist pin is held in by two snap rings. We're not going to take the connecting rod off the piston today, but that's the wrist pin. Piston head, this is a flat head piston. Not all of them are flat. Some can be convex, concave. Some of you might have heard of a Hemi, you know, a Hemi engine. Hemi is for hemispherical, which is a shape of a piston, kind of a domed shape. That's where that name Hemi comes from. There could be scooped, a lot of different piston head orientations out there, but this is just a really, really basic piston head. Some of you might be asking, what's the triangle for? What is that? Does that mean anything? It absolutely means something. That's how you know how to put the piston back in the engine. So it could go this way, or it could go this way. You want that arrow, in this case, you want that arrow pointing to where the push rods travel. Now, some different manufacturers, they do it differently. You know, some will have an arrow pointing to the flywheel side, but in the case of this Kohler, this arrow should be pointing to where the push rods travel, that area there. You've also got these rings, and on this engine, which is pretty common, you're going to have 3 rings. So the top ring is called a compression ring. The center ring is called the wiper ring, or wiper. And then the bottom ring, the one that looks a little different, I don't know if you can see that. That's the oil control ring. So that helps disperse oil up and down in the cylinder. The center ring, the wiper ring, helps to wipe that oil evenly. So it kind of it takes small slices of oil and spreads it out to places that are low. You can kind of think of like a leveler. It levels out the oil. And then the top ring maintains the first line of defense and compression. So how this works is, you notice the rings are wider than the piston head. And that's intentional, because if the piston diameter was the same as the cylinder diameter, which we call bore, the piston couldn't move. It would be seized, it would be stuck. They can't be the same size. The piston has got to be slightly smaller. Now slightly, it's very, very slight, but it does have to be smaller so it can move up and down in the cylinder. Well, because of this difference in size, that could allow air to escape, and we wouldn't have compression. So remember, we need to compress the air. We need to trap it so we can explode it, air and fuel. So that's where the rings come in. So the rings, they expand out to the wall of the cylinder and seal off that chamber, still allowing the piston to move freely in the cylinder. This is the cylinder, by the way. Okay. All right, we're very close here. We remove the piston. The last step would be to remove the crankshaft, which is easy as lifting the crankshaft out of the engine, just like that. So that's the crank. Here's the taper side where the flywheel went. Here's the bearing journal where the connecting rod, the correct connecting rod would attach. Here's the crank gear that rides along the camshaft, and then this engine, this side of the crank, is the output shaft. That's where we'd put the mower blade, for example. That's what turns. That's why we have the engine. So there you have it. Those are all the pieces down to the last one, the crankshaft. And that's a complete disassembly of a Kohler Courage XT7 single cylinder overhead valve engine. Let's review the parts. This is the crankcase, governor shaft, cylinder head bolts, crankshaft, dipstick and dipstick tube, connecting rod cap, connecting rod, piston. I don't know if I mentioned this. This is called a piston skirt down here, piston skirt. Piston rings, compression ring, wiper ring, oil control ring, wrist pin, camshaft, oil pan or crankcase cover, governor gear, crankcase cover gasket, muffler guard, blower housing, engine cover insert, recoil starter, fuel tank, fuel cap, kill lead, governor arm, throttle linkage, governor linkage, ignition armature, spark plug lead, spark plug boot, governor spring, breather tube, float bowl carburetor, tappets, engine cover, fuel line, fuel filter, heat shield, speed control bracket, air cleaner base cover, air cleaner, cylinder head gasket, rocker stud, rocker guide, rocker jam nut, drive cup or flywheel cup, flywheel fan, flywheel, push rods, valve keeper, valve spring, valve. Valve cover, spark plug, and rocker arms. So there you have it. All the parts completely disassembled on the Kohler Courage XT7 engine. Just like other assignments, there are some questions associated with this video, but I hope it was just a chance for you to see how a disassembly would work. Obviously, the goal and my wish would have been for you all to be able to do this in shop. That would have been ideal, but that's not our situation. So I decided to bring the shop to you and bring the experience to you so that you can still see this process. All right, thank you. Bye.